All right, guys, let's get cracking. I have a lot to say. This is going to be a long video, so buckle in. Um, Overall, I'm going to say that I loved the episode. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was delightful. I have lots to say. Like I said, there's a lot of things to go over because there was definitely a lot of TD symbolism, and we're going to get into that. Um, I've been really bad about saying this in the videos, which isn't that big a deal because I usually don't post them until after the episode airs anyway. But I should probably give a spoiler warning just in case. So please be aware that we're going to have massive, massive, massive spoilers for the first episode of Daryl Dixon. I'm pretty much going to talk about every single second of it. So watch at your own risk, and I would recommend not continuing this video until you have watched the episode. Okay, so there, I've done my due diligence. Anyway, let's just go ahead and hop in. I'm not going to go over too many details in this opening sequence because they released the first, whatever it was, 3 minutes or 5 minutes of it weeks ago, and I did, an analysis of it then. However, there was this one thing that was not included when they dropped the first few minutes, several weeks ago, which is this quote. As soon as it popped up, I was like, oh, that's new. I have my dead, and I have let them go. Okay, very much like the very first episode of season one when we heard Judith's voiceover, and that gave us the theme for the whole spin-off because that was the first season. So it's going to be a spin-off wide theme, right? And we know that it's him looking for his happy ending, his romantic soulmate. But this is similar in that I think it's going to be a theme for the season. So it seems to me that one of the steps in him finally finding his happy ending is he has to let go of the people that he's lost. It's still weighing on him so heavily. And not like let them go as in forget them, of course, but just be able to move on and not let the grief and the guilt of them keep holding him back. That's a big part of the problem and why he hasn't been able to move forward and find somebody. And we are already seeing this theme play out in a big way throughout this episode. But at the same time, it's just the beginning of it. You can tell that this is going to be a journey he's going to be on for most of the season, probably all of the season, and it's going to be a big key. So in other words, he needs to let the guilt go, and I think only then will he finally find Beth. So this was an interesting first quote. So, like I said, I'm not going to talk about this too much. We do have the introduction of the hot dogs, which is a theme throughout the story. Just to recap, we do think that is a Sirius symbol, not only because of the dog part, but Sirius is always also associated with fire. And very often, because Sirius is a one-eyed dog, in place of the eye, sometimes you see a flame or a fire. So, hot dog, Sirius fire, you get the idea. And that is a really big theme throughout the episode, and I'm gonna assume it's gonna be that way throughout the season, so that's exciting. All right, so most of this we already saw, like I said, a few weeks ago. They head into London. Now, the opening credits is really interesting. It's really fun. They actually have pictures of them both, just Norman and Melissa, but they look like very textured paintings. So he's got his eyes closed, but notice Melissa is missing an eye. She's actually become kind of a serious figure here. So that's super interesting. All right, so then we get on to the street in London. We have a very obvious 23 on the bus. I have not, I'm watching this early because I told you before I've got a really busy weekend. I'm sure the 23 means something, and I'm not the best with numbers, so I will let my fellow theorists, weigh in on what the 23 means. It seems like we have seen 23 on the show before, but I can't remember exactly where. So I'll get back to you with that one. I was wondering what this was, Mind the Squid. I mean, they had this in the trailer, and I was going, huh, I don't know what that means, but hopefully they'll tell us, and they do. We learn pretty quickly that squid is an English name for walkers. So we see basically what happens here is there are dormant walkers, and they wake up, right? Now, we have one specifically in the red phone booth. Now, the red phone booths are a very iconic symbol of England, of Great Britain, and probably specifically of London. But it's very interesting that it's red. I couldn't help but notice the color, and that we have a walker trapped in there, right? Um, there's a lot of red symbolism quite a few times as we go throughout this episode, so I do think it's important. And given that they're in London and this is such an iconic, symbol of Great Britain and of London, I think they couldn't help but use it as a symbol. Like that would have been a missed opportunity, right? So we have the red. And then we've got a lot of them who are tangled in the vines. This is a pretty cool sequence. Um, Obviously the greenery that they're tangled in is couldn't help but side eye that. And then they start to wake up and they get kind of ambushed and start firing their guns and fighting. And then when they go into the building, it's actually even a green door. um, I will say that this first sequence felt just a little tiny bit contrived to me because they didn't shut the door. They left the door open, and of course that let all the walkers in. It's like, why wouldn't they have just shut the door? But they obviously wanted, the writers, probably for symbolism reasons, wanted them to be fighting at this gate rather than at the door. And there's a lot of broken glass here, and I think that's significant. Carol has to break the glass to try and get the lock open, right, and reach through like that. And she finally does, but Daryl's fighting walkers behind her, and it's just like a really exciting action sequence, right? So then they go up into this place. We've got this, winding spiral. It's not really a staircase, but it just goes up and up like that. We have a really big symbol here that she uses for a while of the fire extinguisher. Now, we have definitely noticed that before. I mean, there's fire in general, right? And this is like another way to say fire. We also have the fire truck, which is like another type of fire extinguisher. Both of them are used to put out fires. And we've seen other sequences that have fire extinguishers in them. And of course, it's red. I actually don't know if this one's red. It's so dark, it's hard to tell. And not all fire extinguishers are red, but a lot of them are. So she uses this to get into the apartment. And okay, so overall, what I'm going to say here is that there were some consumed vibes just because they're walking around and there are paintings. It did make me think of the scene in Consumed when they see the dog painting, right? And Daryl says the thing about it looks like it wiped its ass in paint or, whatever. But more so, I'm really getting still vibes here. And mostly because of this, right? So first, Carol says it's very posh. Now that means rich, like ritzy, right? And then we have this walker hanging. It's a whole lot like the golf club, right? That's where we had the rich bitch walker, and there's definitely the idea of a class system going on here. And that's interesting because not only obviously because of still and everything, but also somebody reminded me pretty recently. So we were talking about the constellations that Norman posted, and then there was the dragon, and it had a crown on it. And I couldn't think of what to compare the crown to. And someone reminded me that in Acheron, which was one of the last seasons of the flagship show, when they're in this subway and he sees the mural on the subway wall, there were crowns there. And again, it was like a rich, poor class system thing. And it's just interesting because they were doing this in still, and this is still a theme that's going on all these years later. And obviously, still was very Beth related, right? So it's just interesting that we're still seeing this. Um, so the other thing I just wanted to say about this part is that I was like on cloud nine watching this. It occurred to me that even though there was not a whole lot happening, yeah, there's some symbolism happening, and obviously I'm having fun with that. But even just watching them, like where there's not much going on and they're just like walking through and exploring this room, I think I'm just happy to be back with The Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Like to get back into it, and just even when nothing's happening and they're just walking around, I'm still just loving it. I'm just on cloud nine watching it. So maybe I'm just a nerd, but I just loved every part of this episode. So Carol goes into the kitchen. There's a clock. I want to say it says 2:40, but it's really hard to see. They don't focus on it. But again, this feels a little bit like, I guess it would be Alone, because they're both a mixture of still and Alone. The fact that they separate and are looking at different things, Beth and Daryl separated, I mean, not massively, but at the golf club, like he went one way, she went another, and they were looking at different things, right? So it feels like this, but also she goes into the kitchen, which was kind of like Alone, looking in the kitchen for food. And she does find something and eat it, but it doesn't tell what it is. But again, the cabinet pulling something down, it just feels like when they found the stash in Alone, right? So she eats it and says, Okay, red-green symbolism. He finds candy. They look like little saltwater taffies, or maybe they're hard candies. So first he finds a green one, and he ends up putting that in his jacket. And then he finds a red one, and he starts to eat that, but then he starts fighting walkers, and he's like holding it in his mouth, the whole wrapper, like he's, got it, his teeth clenched down on the wrapper. The whole time he's fighting the walker. Okay, so how do we want to interpret this? My interpretation is that we're in the red part right now. So it's always, I always say that the red is death and the green is resurrection, but they use that symbolism, not to mean other things. I think it always means that, but they use it for sequences in different ways at the same time. So I feel like we're in the red part. Red usually comes first. And the fact that he finds the green and he tucks it away, that's coming later. And I think the green will be Beth showing up, right? So we're still in the red right now. And that's why we have so many red symbols in this particular episode. See, here he is fighting with it in his mouth. Carol ends up fighting walkers too. And she uses so you notice this is a blonde female looking walker. And I think it's wearing a red shirt even. She uses the fire extinguisher to kill it in kind of a unique way. She actually puts it into the walker's mouth and turns it on. You know, hurrah for new and interesting ways to kill walkers. I'm sure we could. Oh, look, the fire extinguisher does look red right there. I didn't even notice that. Um, I'm sure we could read into this using the fire to kill a blonde walker. I mean, I'm sure we could come up with symbols for this, but um, take it for what it is. It's just we're seeing the symbols. It's very, very heavy in this episode, all the symbols. So they go out onto the balcony after this. They successfully kill the walkers that they found and look out over London. Let's see, do I have anything else? Oh, so this is just familiar, right? Not only are there all these walkers, which is not a good thing, they're completely surrounded now. So I mean, it kind of makes sense, like in the countryside, for there not to be walkers, but it's the city and they just woke them all up. So now they've got a whole city of walkers to deal with, like most of the cities have. But they're surrounding this car and there's greenery on it. And I think the car is even kind of a greenish blue color. And so it just looks really interesting, right? It feels like a Beth thing to have a car that's surrounded by walkers. And you can see there's a lot of them. And I didn't even mention that the double-decker bus is red, which again, that's like the iconic look for a double-decker bus. But again, because we're doing London, I think there are some red symbols that it would have been a lost opportunity. They just had to use them, right? So they stay in this place for 2 days. And, here we see like clean dishes and she's got a clothesline going. So they're resting and recouping, but the walkers are not thinning out. And so then they talk about how they don't have any food. Okay, but here's some more very Beth coded stuff, right? He's been looking for food and the only thing he finds is beer. And he says it's probably flat anyway. And this whole part, I mean, again, I think I could really read into what they're saying in detail. She says, well, first of all, he says it's probably flat anyway. And she goes, well, it's high in iron. That's something. And so it's like, it's what they have. It feels like, you're going to take, it's kind of like the peach schnapps almost like he finds something and he's saying, no, it's not very good. And she's going, well, because Beth says, well, it's all there is left. So that's what we're going to drink, right? And it's kind of similar to that is what they're saying. And then she looks at the hot dogs and seems like she wants to eat them. Oh, he says this sucks. Okay, another funny thing, this is totally a little bit off topic, but um, I'm on AMC Plus instead of going through Amazon this time. And the main reason I did that, I like the Amazon interface because I'm just more familiar with it, but Amazon is the one that's keeping me from taking screenshots. So I got on AMC Plus and actually this is allowing me to get the screenshot. So it's better. But the funny thing is that I noticed that their closed captions, sometimes like about 50% of the time, they're not translating it when he says the F word. It's really funny. Like in the beginning, when the walkers started coming at them in the street, I'm pretty sure he says fuck it, and it translated it as hold it. And I was like, that's not what he said. And there are a few times that it translates it and it's in the closed captions, but like I said, about 50% of the time it just doesn't have it. I thought that was funny. I was like, why does it keep doing that? Anyway, this part was funny. He's like, this sucks, and that made me laugh. But she seems like she wants to eat the hot dogs, and he goes, hey, I thought you were saving those for a special occasion. But she says, well, if it's our last meal, then sure. And he gives her a can opener. And he says that they're going to try to break out at dawn. They can't stay because there's no food. They're going to die if they stay, right? And she says, at least we can go down fighting. So here's her looking at the hot dogs. If our last meal isn't a special occasion, I don't know what is. But then they see the light on the mirror. Somebody's trying to signal them. Okay, so he breaks the mirror it's functional so that he can signal back, but he broke the glass. This is exactly like in Still when she said, do you have to break the glass? It was not a mirror in that case. It was like a picture frame, but it just reminded me of that. I was like, oh, there it goes. I mean, this is a mirror in a frame and he broke the glass. And of course, they signal, but they don't know who it is. So she says, I had to rewind this to see what she says. She says, sleep on the dogs. And in other words, they're not going to eat them yet because maybe they actually do have a way out and this is not their last meal. But that also feels like it's double speak for the serious character isn't here yet. We're going to sleep on it, but it might be coming somewhere down the road, right? Oh, and then she says, I'll get the beer too. So I'm assuming they drank the beer because we don't really see it again. And again, very much like still. So then we have this, I had seen this because they released it somewhere, just these first few minutes where they hear the noise on the roof and then he shows up. So I'd seen this part before and I didn't understand why he was like why there was the noise on the roof, but then he explains that he's traveling on rooftops. And I did wonder about that. I feel like there's a little bit of symbolism behind that. The first thing that comes to mind is the hole in the roof theory, which is an old theory if you haven't heard of that, but I'm not sure the symbolism is exactly the same here. The hole in the roof theory is really more about um, we kind of related it a little bit to Beth being shot, almost like a hole in her head, which I know is really morbid, but we also have something where it produces life. So there was in season 4, they Sam and his girlfriend talked about the greenhouse and how the hole had let the rain in. So there was actually a lot of fruit in there. So having the hole actually produced life. Anyway, we went on and on about that theory and him traveling on the rooftops. There was really nothing about a hole. So I'm not sure it's exactly the same, but it is interesting that he's traveling on the rooftops. So we finally meet him. I thought he was delightful. I really like this character. I wish that we could have kept him for longer because I really liked him. But actually, in the episode Insider at the end, they have, an interview with him with Stephen Merchant, and he said that was all the time he had. He could only give them one episode. So he said, they asked if he wanted to be in it, and he was like, yes, but I can only give you one episode. I'm sure it was a scheduling thing. And they were like, cool, we'll kill you off at the end of the episode. And he was like, cool. And so that's what they did. And maybe they would have kept him longer if he had had more time to give them. But anyway, um, so this is when they're at dinner. They finally explain what the squid is. Like I said, that it's a name for walkers. He gives this really interesting little poem. I don't know if I got all of it. Oh, but before I go into that, this part right here, when specifically when Carol says this, you survived all this time by yourself, and she says that's impressive. This is what made me realize that Julian's character is 100% a Beth proxy. 100%. Okay. So they stumble upon him. He kind of finds them and he's been alone. I don't know that she will be completely alone like Julian was alone, but I think in this case, alone is a metaphor for without her family, without the group. She's been alone all this time. And after that, I started seeing it through that lens, and trust me, it's all there. It makes a lot of sense. So they're talking to him. They have this part where he kind of uh, goes through what happened in England. It's very sad. Um, Poor guy, he's been alone all this time, but there really isn't or doesn't seem to be anybody there. The island itself did kind of self-destruct. So there's just him and lots of walkers as far as he knows. Um, so then after dinner, they move to the couch and they're drinking. And this, of course, was hilarious because Daryl and Carol are not drinking. They're just like throwing their whiskey out. It was very Emperor's New Groove or something. And I was going, oh, or maybe they're trying to get him drunk, but really they're just, I don't know that they're specifically trying to get him drunk, but they definitely are trying to convince him to take them back to America. And they're trying not to get drunk themselves, basically. Um, so we have him wanting them to stay and um, oh, I didn't go over the poem. Hold on, let me go back. So I guess I didn't take any pictures of the poem. So they asked him what squid was, and he says, I just wrote it down, departed souls, equal soles of the feet, feet, plates of meat, meat pie, dog's eye, dog and bone, phone your mate, china plate, plate and cup, cup of rosy, rosy tea, or rosy lead tea, teapot lid, quid squid. And then he goes, yeah, it's really obvious. And I think that's supposed to be a joke because it's like, yeah, that's really not obvious. And maybe it's more obvious to British people who get all of the references, but I couldn't even tell you what half of this means. I haven't looked at it and I probably will. Obviously, there's tea involved, which is a very British thing. Um, but the one that caught my eye, of course, is Dog's Eye. Meat pie, Dog's Eye. Okay, guys, Dog's Eye, serious. I mean, that's like the most on the nose serious reference you could even give us is Dog's Eye, right? Um, so there's that, and again, that could be another hint that he is a Beth proxy. So I may come back and do more on the poem if I find anything else. Everyone else is welcome to look it up and tell me what you find. It's a detail, and I just haven't looked into the detailed references yet, but the Dog's Eye definitely caught my attention. All right, so they're trying to get him to take them home. He wants them to stay and go to Buckingham Palace and all of this. He says, "Oh no, it is wonderful here." And now I've got someone to share it with. Okay, so the next thing here, there's so many good lines of dialogue in this episode, but so Carol is saying, we have a whole world waiting for us back home. She says, friends that love us and miss us, they're waiting for us to come back. That's what makes it home. So we've said for a long time that home is not a place. It's more like where your family is, right? Your home is your people. But this is them defining it for us in a really interesting way. And it's pretty much what we always thought. But I love that they're actually giving us a definition of it. So in terms of The Walking Dead, home is friends. And, I think friends can be also family, also lovers, anything like that. Friends is kind of all encompassing. It's just anybody that you're close to who isn't your enemy, right? They're friends that love us and miss us and are waiting for us to come back. That is such a lovely definition of home because, um, I mean, on so many levels, not only is it, yes, it's just always what we've already always said, but love us, miss us. I mean, who has Daryl missed most of all, right? I mean, you could say he's missed other people like Glenn and Tyrese and Merle, right? And others, but who has he missed most of all? And are waiting for us to come back. Does that not feel like that's aimed at us and Beth returning? Because it does to me. So it pulls in a lot of things, and it's just I was like, oh, that's just gorgeous. I'm so glad they gave us that. And then it also occurred to me that it ties to the "You're gonna miss me so bad when I'm gone," right? Line, which is Beth's line. Um, and then Carol even says, "Did I get it here? Don't you want somebody to miss you?" And again, that's just very much coded to everything Daryl's going through in this spinoff. Like I talked about a lot in was that season 1 or 2 when Falou talks about this a little bit. It's not when they're at the nest, it's before that. So I'm thinking it was season 1. And he says something about, we've got everyone has someone who's waiting for them or something like that. I'm probably screwing up the line. And Daryl's head goes down because he doesn't have that, but he wants that, right? And this I think ties into that too. So don't you want somebody to miss you? Don't you want to find someone, right? So I just thought this was lovely. And then, of course, they lie and say that they can sail, which they can't. And the funny thing about this guy, he's so friendly and he's so easygoing, and he just agrees to go with them. I mean, they convince him a little bit, but it's not like it took them 4 days or 2 weeks or something to convince him. He was convinced like within a few minutes, an hour, and he's just like, okay, then we'll do it. And he tells them to meet him out front at 10. They don't know how they're going to know it's 10, and then 10 o'clock rolls around and they're not sure what to do, but he rings the bells in Big Ben, and that pulls all the walkers away so that they can get out. This is him telling it that. And then he kind of tries to test them. He says that the stern is the front, which it is not, and they don't know that. So that's how he can tell they're not actually sailors. And the problem is he doesn't feel like he's much of a sailor either. So they're all amateurs trying to do this, and they're just worried that it's not going to go well. But they get out and they head out. And I actually did not realize the first time I watched it that Daryl had dropped his crossbow until he picked it up here. But watching it the second time, he actually throws it down. And I think that's because he's out of arrows. So he shoots all his arrows and then he throws it down. But then when they go out and all the walkers are gone, he just picks it up and he picks up some of the arrows, pulls them out of the walkers and takes them with him. They don't know what the Thames is. He's going, it's a river, like they're showing how little they know about anything water related. But then they take off sailing. And I actually thought this part too it was so well done. Like the whole thing, it manages to be funny and cute and also really moving, you know. So they're leaving, and this part, it just had, I think it was the sad music. These are so many people that were up here that died that are walkers, and it's like surprisingly poignant as they're going under this bridge. And then him looking back, like he's saying goodbye to his homeland, and who doesn't sound to me like he's ever really gone anywhere, and he kind of has the sense that he's probably not going to come back. So I just thought it was really poignant and really well done. Okay, then this part. The first time I just kind of watched it and let it go, let it simmer, right? And then I went back to it, but I did have the thought that it felt a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like superfluous, I guess, because basically he acts like he's gotten them lost and he doesn't know what he's doing. And he even gets mad and like throws something, his pencil or something. And so it feels like, oh no, what's going on? We're lost. And then all of a sudden after that, he goes, just kidding, we're exactly where we need to be, you know? And so it's like, okay, why did they have him do that? Why was he freaking out like that if everything's cool, you know? But then going back to watch it again, I was like, oh, that's why. Okay. So really interesting lines of dialogue here too. He says that when he was learning, and remember, he told them that he didn't even make it through the Royal Naval Academy, right? He didn't do well there, but uh, it was the long navigation and the compass theory, compass is a symbol, that, you know, it's like when you don't have any landmarks to steer by and you're just out in the ocean, you just have to get your bearings and figure out where you are. That's what really kind of did him in. It was the last straw for him when he was learning. And it's because of the pressure of it. He would say, you know, the test proctor was there yelling at me about my crew and getting them home and their families, and all that stands between home, there's that word again, home, and oblivion is me. And he just cracked under the pressure, right? Um, and so then Carol's going, oh, great. So you're telling me we're lost, you know? And then he says, no, actually, every time I do the bearings, we're exactly where we need to be. So I mean, in terms of his character, I think that maybe it's something about how he put so much pressure on himself, and you know, like he said, he kind of cracked under the pressure. But when he's actually doing it, he's capable. He can do it, right? So, you know, maybe giving yourself more credit than you did before, or you know, being able to accomplish something you didn't believe you could, you know, something like that. But it also occurs to me that um, you know, the first time when things went wrong and he panicked and cracked under the pressure, that could be a symbol for what happened with Beth in Atlanta when she got shot, right? And then the right where we're supposed to be really sounds to me like it went the way it had to, the way it was always going to. And also just in general, the writer's telling us we're right on course here. We're right exactly where we need to be. Just hang with us a little bit longer, right? Okay, and then we actually have him saying 17 days. This is the one thing that I caught the first time through, and I was like, oh, 17 days. Yes, 11 to 17 days, but still, we have a 17 days reference here, folks. Um, and I really want to almost interpret that literally, like we're going to see Beth in 11 to 17 days, you know, something like that. Uh, which, you know, we already know that we're probably not going to actually see her in season 3. So it's not like 17 days for us. You know, it could be 17 days from now for Daryl and Carol, but the whole first season might only be 5 days or something, you know, and I don't know if I should be interpreting that literally. But even if you don't interpret it literally, there's still the 17 days. So that's exciting. And I mean, think about it, you guys. He says that we're gonna be there in 11 to 17 days in North America, but that's their home. So they're saying they'll be home in 17 days, and Beth is Daryl's home. You see what I mean? So we could have fun with this for sure. Let's see. So they're very excited. They start whooping. And then we move. Yeah. See, there's the one F word that it did caption for me. All right, so then we get this part. We get just the barest taste of some flashbacks here. Um, I did my best to capture pictures. Dead end. I actually am wondering, this looks a little bit like the the yard, where he was taken from when he got put on the boat and that Carol ended up. But I'm not sure because it's a flashback, it's probably not supposed to be that, if this is like a flashback to when he was a kid. But the most obvious thing, since we can't really make much out here, is the dead end sign. I do see a bike here, which bicycles are a symbol. But you can't really tell much from the screenshot. And then we see this boy, and we hear someone say, "Gotta go now." And that's all we got. But obviously, this is the beginning of the flashbacks to when he was a kid and he's thinking about these things. Um, then we had this part with Carol. This part was, I thought it was funny and it was sweet and also very sad. So he asks her about Laurent. Do you think he made it back home? She says, of course he did. You kept your promise to Isabel. And then she starts telling him about what she experienced. She says something lifted. She said, she just says she, but which I don't know. I didn't even think about that before. She doesn't actually say Sophia. So it's another example of them not actually using the name. But she says she, it's almost like she came to see me to tell me that it was okay to let it all go. So this is going back to the theme of what the quote was at the beginning. Go back and read it so I get it right. I have my dead and I have let them go, right? Um, so Carol's already done this. Which we kind of knew, right? She's ahead of Daryl in this. She has let her demons go. And now she's peaceful and she feels lighter and lifted. And she's actually excited about what comes next. I gotta say, I really hope she makes it home to Ezekiel. I don't know if that's where they're going with it. There's been a lot of conjecture about where they're going with Carol, but I would like him to be able to see this happier, more excited Carol. I think that would be fun. So I hope she does. Anyway, and I thought this was funny when she's like, "Do I sound nutty?" And he's like, "Uh-huh." Like I said, it was cute, it was funny, and then he puts his arm around her and says, "I'm happy for you." But it's sad because it's obvious that he's not where she is. He doesn't feel that happiness or that peace yet. And she says it'll get better, so she's trying to help him through it, but it's obvious that he's just not there yet. Oh, Not Alone. Did you guys catch this? The name of the boat? It's the KNOT, so it's like a nautical pun, but not alone. Think about that. In season 4, alone. Here, not alone. Not an accident, my friends. So then we have this scene, another really fabulous scene with really good dialogue. They do keep saying this. They say it probably 3 times throughout the episode when he'll say, "How are we on food? Oh, we're better on scotch. How are we on water? Oh, we're better on scotch." And I'm not even sure exactly what to make of that other than it's an alcohol uh, reference, obviously. And I didn't even say this before. The beer that he found, I'm assuming he and Carol drank that, like I said, because we didn't see it again. But when Julian shows up, he brings the scotch. He has all the scotch. So they're drinking it throughout the episode, and that's stronger. That's whiskey. You might almost even relate that back to still, like I said, the beer, they said it was flat, it was not very good, it was all they had, so that's the peach schnapps. And then the scotch they have is more like the moonshine, it's stronger, and they drink a lot more of it. So anyway, so they sit down, or he sits down, Daryl does, and they have this conversation. And it's just very, it's Julian being very, I guess, nostalgic, but really more like introspective about things. And he says, "Yeah, someday we're going to get to a point where we don't have any more scotch. It'll be the last bottle." He says, "All that history, tradition, will just be gone, And then he says, "The sea makes you think of these things." So it's obvious that, when you're sitting out at sea and you don't have anything else to think about or talk about, you start really reflecting like that. And at this point, I said that Julian is a Beth proxy. 100,000% he is, but he also becomes something of a Daryl proxy here. What he says is very relatable to Daryl. He says, "I saved every cent most of my life thinking I'd set myself up before I found someone to share my life with. And just when I felt ready, the squid came," meaning the walkers, the turn happened, and there was no one left to find." And I thought this was really sad for Daryl because I feel like it's reinforcing his fear that he's never going to find anybody. Um, and of course he's not going to like open up and have a heart to heart with this guy. He doesn't even do that with Carol, so he's probably not going to. He doesn't say anything about himself, but um, he does say maybe you'll find someone in America, which, I maybe we could interpret that for him. I mean, at this point, most of us are thinking he's going to find Beth in Spain, but or maybe if they go back to France in season 4 or something in Europe, but maybe that is also a clue that the person he finds is not going to be of European origin. She's an American, so maybe you'll find someone in America. Anyway, just something I thought of. Then Julian quotes Tennyson, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved." And I love this line. This was like maybe my favorite line of the whole uh, episode. He says, "You have the blues, we have Tennyson." And as soon as he said that, I was like, blues, music reference. And Daryl goes, "I'll take the blues." Daryl wants the music. It's so cute. I love it. I was like, yes. There we go. Maybe you'll find someone in America. So, I mean, hey, I put that together too. The chronology of that. He wants the blues, he wants the music, and then America. Anyway, that's a cute smile too. Then they clink glasses, and then the storm's going to hit. So the other thing this actually did remind me of the whole storm sequence. You remember back in season 4, it would have been 4A when they were dealing with uh, the virus at the prison, right? The bleeding eye virus. We see Herschel next to a painting, and the painting actually looks very much like what this whole storm sequence looks like. It's like a stormy sea, like coloring, and you see a boat on it, and it says, oh, I hope I don't screw up this quote, but it says something like, "Calm seas don't make for good sailors." And, obviously that's a theme. You're going to be really put through the storm in order to, it's like a refiner's fire sort of thing to prove your mettle. And that's what we're going to have here, just in a very literal way. So, okay, once again, I felt like this was something of a symbolic Beth sequence. The sail gets stuck and Daryl can't get it down. And then the boon goes across and hits Julian really hard in the head and hurts him. So I'm not even sure exactly what the sail being stuck would be, but there's something symbolic there. And I did feel like him getting hit in the head with the boon was a lot like Beth getting shot. Now, obviously, he doesn't die here. They don't think he's dead. But this leads to his death, really, in a big way, in the fact that he got hit in the head, right? And then when he's talking to Carol, this is interesting too. Hit by a boom, talk about an amateur mistake. That almost feels like Beth stabbing Dawn with the scissors. It was an amateur mistake. And he feels like kind of an idiot about it. But this whole thing, he's not smiling anymore. You can tell he's being a little bit doomsday about it. And then we have this line again: "How are we on tea? We're still better on scotch." And this just made me smile because keep calm and bugger on. I have not done them in a long time, but years ago I kept doing keep calm and Bethyl on edits. I'll have to go back and see if I can find those and repost them. But it makes sense that they would have him say this keep calm and carry on. That whole thing is usually attributed to World War II and that it came out of England, this slogan, right? So it's kind of funny that he says bugger on, but that just made, I used to do Bethyl on themes all the time, so I need to find those, and that just made me smile. Anyway, they go back up so that they are selling the ship. And okay, so we have another really interesting thing here, which I had read a little bit about this. She's like trying to say, in case anything happens, and he's like, no, 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 stop it. Stop saying that. I'm glad I found you. And he says, quit it. We're going to get home. We're going home. You got it. And then she says, yeah, with our with our fucking hot dogs. First of all, let me just say, it made me laugh, and I'm so glad they gave Melissa an F word. I don't remember hearing Carol say it before. Maybe she did, but this was kind of fun. But again, think about how to interpret this. If the hot dog is the serious symbol, and they're saving it for later, and she's referencing it here, it's like, we're not going to go home. Well, I guess, okay, it's not that they're not going to go home. They are going to go home with the hot dogs. You see what I mean? So it's like they're not going to go home until they have the hot dogs, until they have Beth, so they're going to go home. Anyway, the serious symbol Beth is going to be part of that, right? Um, then they wash up on the beach. Daryl's obviously very excited about this. Carol is hurt. This was funny. She just said, there's 3 of you. And he goes, yeah, your worst nightmare. She says she got clocked in the head. And she's even got blood on her forehead, although it's the opposite side of Beth's. They figure out they probably didn't get to Maine. Okay, so he goes looking for Julian in here. again, this feels a lot like it's somewhat of a replay of what happened with Beth. He's looking for Julian inside, I mean, it's inside the boat, but it's inside the vehicle that was transporting them, right? So with Beth, it would have been a car. Obviously, there were no boats in Maine, there was no water there where they were. But here, it's a boat. And he's looking inside for Julian. And it's obvious that he thinks there's, he's just being logical. There's a good chance Julian could be dead. So he's got his knife. He's half expecting a Julian Walker to show up. But the point is, this feels like a replay of them looking in the car or getting back to the car, and Beth is not there. And he's looking, and they have like two different jump scares where he pulls back a blanket and then opens a door, and both times, it's just supplies. Julian isn't there. Julian's somewhere else, right? And wherever he landed, like them, he might have landed outside the boat, but either way, he got up and staggered away toward the ocean. So, um, the point is, I mean, obviously here Julian has died and is a walker, and we don't think that of Beth, but Daryl and Carol do. We think that they believe that she turned into a walker and staggered away. So this is a replay of what they feel like happened, right? Um, should we be reading into the fact that he is near the ocean? Did Beth end up near the ocean right away? I don't know. That very well, if she made it over to Europe at some point, then I would assume that it is something of a parallel there, because she would have had to gone to the coast at some point, right? Maybe it didn't happen right away. Maybe it did. We don't know. But at some point, she must have. So kind of interesting. It kind of goes back and forth. But Carol finally sees him. Her vision is still a bit blurry, but unfortunately, he's died. I was hoping he wouldn't. I was like, oh man, I wanted him to survive longer. Naturally, he tries to eat Carol because, that's just what happens. But Daryl gets there to help her. And then even this was interesting. This is kind of the burial they do for him. They push him back out into the sea, like they're giving him a sea burial. And I noticed that his body capsized, like just a little ways off. It's just like right here. So he's not that far in front of Daryl. He went under. And that was interesting to me because I don't know that that would normally be the case. Bodies usually float unless they're weighted down. And since he pushed him out, he wasn't weighted down, right? You could argue that as a body decomposes, it might sink for a while. And then usually they come to the surface when gases are released, in the process of decomp. But he's only been dead a few hours at most. So I don't think that he would be decomposed enough to sink on his own. So anyway, all I'm saying is that I feel like it's just another Beth thing that he pushes this guy out there and then he disappears. So it's like he went looking for her in the boat slash car and she wasn't there. She was somewhere else and then she just disappeared. He just didn't see her anymore. So it's sad, And Carol has the hot dogs again. All right, so then we get to this part where he kind of has to do a little bit of surgery on Carol's shoulder, and man, this injury looks like it's painful. He can just tell something's wrong. She's acting weird. She's clearly in pain. And then he realizes she's actually bleeding, so uh, she's got metal in her back that's got to come out, and she's burning up. Here, let's go a little bit further. He finds this tackle box and scissors, which obviously is going to capture our attention, and a knife that he's going to use to do the surgery. He puts the knife in the flames so that he's cleaning it, So then we get to the injury. Okay. So let me say this. There are a lot of people who are convinced that Carol's going to die. I'm not personally convinced of that. I think she's got a lot of story left. I could be wrong, and other people have said maybe she'll stay in Europe when he goes home. I just don't see that really happening. I think wherever he goes, she's going to want to go with him. So, I mean, she came to find him, you know what I mean? And she told him it was hard to be at home without him. Oh, but you go and I'll stay here. Like that just doesn't really jive to me. So again, I could be wrong and things could change. But what I will say is that smaller injuries like this, and I recognize this was a pretty profound injury. It got infected and that could definitely kill her if they didn't, get her medical care. But what I mean is she wasn't shot and it wasn't like losing a limb, or it wasn't like aside from the infection, it wasn't a catastrophic injury. And I've noticed over the years that injuries like this in the show are very often a foreshadow of bigger injuries later. So the two that come to mind, first there was Tyrese. When he was at the prison, he cut his arm and it was right on the top of his forearm and it got infected. And so he had a fever. And that was when he was with Lizzie and Mika. And then when they met Carol, she started putting the sap on the wound, and eventually he got better. That was a foreshadow of when he was bitten, when he died, because he was bitten in the exact same place. So you can see that it was a foreshadow. The other uh, instance that comes to mind is in season 6 when Daryl and Sasha and Abraham blew up the Saviors. Remember that Daryl got cut on his back, right over like the wing on his vest. And it was small, it wasn't a big deal. They got back and Denise patched it up. But then later in the season, just before Glenn dies, when it's Glenn and Daryl and Rosita, when all of them were captured by the Saviors, Dwight shoots Daryl in the back in the exact same place he was cut before. So it was a foreshadow of a bigger injury and him getting shot. So all I'm saying is that this may foreshadow something bigger. And I will say, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean Carol's going to die. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just kind of throwing out some possibilities here. But with Tyrese, it was a walker bite that was foreshadowed. And the way that it's showing this, like the hole in her sweater, does remind me a lot of David from season 6. And he was bitten actually I think he was bitten on the back of the shoulder too. And it just looked a lot like this. Now, this does not look like a bite mark. Usually when we see the walker bite marks, there's 2 holes, which is interesting that they always show it that way. And this is one. Anyway, I'm just saying I was thinking that this could be foreshadowing something else. Once again, it does not mean that it foreshadows it's not like a death omen for her necessarily. It could be, but I don't know what this is leading to, but it just feels like this is the foreshadow of something bigger coming later. Um, I think it's safe to say that Carol doesn't die this season because I think the reviewers would have, I mean, they've got a gag order. They couldn't have told us that, but I think they would have made a bigger deal about things or been way more bummed about it. You know what I mean? I think there would be some indication. So, whatever this is leading to, whatever it foreshadows, it might not even happen this season. That's all I'm saying. But we'll have to keep it in mind because this was kind of interesting. Anyway, and it was hard to watch. That just looks so raw and so painful. And then this was funny, like it's not necessarily supposed to be funny, but he says, I'm gonna have to cut some stuff out. And she goes, stuff? And he just goes, uh-huh. Like, Daryl, you're not helping. She's freaking out. Anyway, but we get through it and he is able to take it out and just ouch. And then I kind of had to laugh at this too because I thought he was going to give her some alcohol, when it was done, or else clean the wound with it again. And no, he was just drinking it because it freaked him out to have to do that. And I'm sure he's upset that she's in pain. So then we reach the next part and we finally see these bone mask guys. I'm gonna forget what they're called now. I told you in the last video. It's like Primo, but Primo, it's a longer word than that. Anyway, so we see them come and Daryl just hides. He puts out the fire because obviously he doesn't know who they are. But they don't actually know Daryl and Carol are there. They're coming to investigate the shipwreck. And Carol's still a little bit delirious. Daryl has to make her be quiet. We see this guy on the horse. I'm assuming he's the leader because he's the only one up on a horse, but he doesn't see them. Plenty scary looking though. And the next day he says that they took everything from the boat and what was left got trashed. So they're going to leave, try to find some food. They do come by a sign which tells them they're in Spain, and they're a little depressed about that. Carol says they didn't get very far. I don't know what this is leading to. It's interesting, and it could be related to the bone mask guys. There's all these walkers that are in nets, and my question is, how did they get this many walkers all at once? These nets are like they're one of those traps where you step in them and they spring. But both of them have like 15 walkers in them, so it's like, how did they get so many people? And the really gross thing about that is they probably captured all these people at once and then they just left them to die up there. These people probably starved to death. I was like, ugh, yeah, that's pretty brutal. But we don't know who did this or what it's leading to. It's just something they saw, so I'm sure we'll find out eventually. This is the one that was right above them that was like dripping on them, which is gross. Carol says, I think I hate this place. So they find a wooden shack. Couldn't help but feel like, the moonshine shack a little bit, but it's on a river. And they decide they're going to stay there. So he dresses her wound again. And this is another really good conversation between them that was really fun. Um, he says he doesn't want her to go to sleep yet, and I was trying to figure out if that was medically sound. I was thinking, why does she need to stay awake? Like you would almost want her to sleep because that's the best way to let your body fight off infection. But she did say she got hit in the head, so it could be that he is worried she has a concussion. And if that's the case, I mean, at this point, it's probably been barely 24 hours since the shipwreck, and maybe not quite that, depending on, just the time frame when they wrecked and everything. Um, but you could relate that to Beth too. At the hospital, they told her she had a concussion. Anyway, so he wants her to stay awake, and she says, "Let's play I Spy." And he says, "I hate that game." And she says, "I know, that's what makes it so fun." So he tells her to start talking to him about the same stuff she was talking about on the boat. And again, this is just a way to keep her talking and keep her awake. And she says, "You lied. You always lied." And he says, "No, I never lie to you ever." And she says, "Yeah, but you hide stuff." Uh, I didn't capture them both, but she first points to her head and says, "You hide what's in here and you hide what's in here." So head and heart. And he just says, "Okay, you got me. I hide stuff." And then he tells her about Isabel, basically. I was ready to give up. I thought it was all over. And then she was there and she says, "Isabel, yes, I found a fight in me I didn't know I had." And she says, "Me and you both." So a lot of people have talked about hoping that he will talk about Beth. I actually think this is a good sign that he might. What I'm kind of hoping here is that he will go progressively backward in what he talks about. So he starts talking about Isabel. Maybe he'll go backward. Maybe he'll even mention Leah, talk about Leah, and then go back. Who knows? He might even talk about Glenn. He might talk about other people he's lost. You know what I mean? And I think we could keep going back until he finally does talk about her. So, I mean, I'm just saying that in terms of the structure of it, if they were only going to have him talk about Isabel, you would think that it would be like near the end of the season, like it would culminate in him talking about her. But they're talking about her first, and there's nowhere to go forward from that. So the only place he can really go is back. So I'm really hoping that they will actually do that. And if you think about it, again with that theme that he has to let the people who have died go, Isabel was the most recent person he lost, but he's lost a lot of others before that. So maybe talking about Isabel here is letting her go, finally getting over. And again, I almost hate to say it that way. It doesn't mean like forgetting her, getting over it. It just means letting go of his grief and being able to move forward. But okay, so maybe he's done that with her now by just having this short conversation with Carol about it. But he hasn't certainly done that with any of the people before that he lost. So he has to go back through them and let them all go. You see what I mean? So I hope that's the case. And I even think that the I Spy game is sort of a little bit indicative of this. So he says, "Let's keep never giving up." I think that's actually more about Carol. I think he's really worried right now because she's hurt and because she's kind of depressed that she's going to like give up and lay down and die. So he's like, "No, no, stay with me." Anyway, but then he actually does say, "I spy." So we've got the hot dogs to eat. And he says, "Yeah." And so then he actually does it. So if you think about it like this, she says, "Let's play I Spy." And the funny thing is, like we've never heard them play I Spy before, right? But he says, "I hate that game, you know that," which means she's asked him to play this before. And he probably said no. So anyway, I think that's hilarious. But anyway, he says, "I hate that." So if you think of I Spy as like a symbol for him talking about people that he's lost, she says, "Let's play I Spy." "No, I don't want to. I hate that." And then after he talks about Isabel, he goes, "Okay, let's play I Spy." You see what I mean? So it's like he finally agreed to talk about it. And then he even kind of smiles when he says it, and they're both kind of laughing. So I thought this was really fun. It was cool. And then what does he say that he spies? Something red. Ah, the symbolism. I love it. Okay, the next morning, Carol wakes up and she hears laughing. It sounds to me like girls or women laughing, but the captions say indistinct chatter, and she's not sure where it's coming from. I'm assuming she went toward it. She's like looking for what that is. Daryl is hunting a rabbit and he gets it. On his way back, he sees a vehicle with some guys in it, but when he goes back to the cabin, Carol is not there. And the last thing we see is him looking for her and calling her name. This felt very much to me like him calling Beth's name after she was taken from him. So if you think about that, the sequence it's not terribly detailed, but with Beth, we had the moonshine shack and then she disappeared and he was calling her name as the car took off. Here we have a shack on the river, kind of skipped over the whole funeral home symbol, but now she's gone when he returned and he's calling her name. Or, maybe this is, we could also relate this to the missing 17 days and saying that when he went back to where he left Beth, she was gone. And him calling Carol's name, we don't know if he called Beth's name when he was looking for her. I almost doubt it, only because he would have thought that she was dead, that she was a walker, and he knows she's not going to respond to that. But even so, this is like um, a a symbolic parallel of him searching for Beth, right? And yeah, I think that is the end. Yeah, I don't have any more pictures. So hang on, let me look through my notes here and see if I forgot anything. Yeah, I think that's all I have, guys, but I loved this episode. I watched it twice and it was just so heavy on the Beth symbolism. So overall, I would say um, another thing that could be the case about the red and the green, because there's only two colors, right? It's not like four colors and we have to go through four steps. There's only two. And we didn't see, I mean, I'm sure we saw some red and green in the first two seasons of Daryl Dixon. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm sure we did at some point. But to have them in this first episode, like I said, it's like a theme for the season. And then looking back over what, Zabel and the other showrunners have said, that it was always going to be a two-season arc in France and a two-season arc in um, Spain. The two colors like that, the red and the green, it feels like this is what they're laying out for the two-season arc in Spain. We're in the red right now, which is probably season 3, and season 4 will be the green. So, and that makes sense based on what we have been told from the reviewers and what I've talked about in the last few videos. If he gets some major sign or symbol of Beth that makes him realize she's alive at the end of this, and then season 4 is the green. Remember that when Glenn was letting Maggie know he was alive after his fake out in season 6, he released green balloons. So green is always the look at me, I'm alive kind of thing. So I kind of think that's what they're doing here. Season 3 is still the red. And red, I always say, is death, right? He still believes Beth is dead, so we're in the red part. But also he has not let go of the dead, so that the people he has lost, so the dead are still with him. He has to. So we really have this on two levels. I mean, obviously the one that we're most concerned with is when he realizes Beth is alive and all of that, the red and the green. But even for Daryl, if he's personally in the red, it's because he's still being weighed down by the people that he lost. So he's still in the red because death is still, it's almost like the energy he's existing in. And the green will be when he finally lets go of that and can live again. So he's going to be resurrected like as a person, right? But that's also going to coincide with him finding Beth, or, probably realizing she's alive and hopefully finding her. So it just kind of makes sense that season 3 is the red and season 4 will be the green, which is when we will really, for sure, get Beth and Daryl together again on screen. I was going to say something else and I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, just Julian's line again from the boat as we are exactly where we need to be. So another way to interpret that is that Daryl and Carol are exactly where they need to be in order to run into Beth. And I do think that this little story, with his character, Julian's, I mean, was a foreshadow of them running into Beth. So anyway, I'll stop rambling now, but I loved this episode. I thought it was fabulous. It was so much fun, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the season holds. I hope you all enjoyed it, and yeah, I will post this, and then I will get to more asks and more videos, and hopefully my Operation Lead the Walkers Away series in the next week. Honestly, it might take me more than a week to get to that, but I am working on it. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about the episode. I hope you all liked it as much as I did, and yeah, I will talk to you soon.